Doug Larson never expected to come home to what looked like a music festival parked on his quiet suburban street. He had just wrapped a 36-hour rotation at Station 9. His boots still smelled like smoke from a barn fire up in Cedar Creek, and all he wanted was a shower, a cold beer, and peace. Instead, he found chaos. Maple Cross Drive, usually calm and quiet, was transformed into a gaudy, overstuffed mess. Cars lined both sides of the road, bumper to bumper, some even jutting onto sidewalks. A bounce house shaped like a flamingo swayed against a gust of wind, dangerously close to low-hanging power lines. Portable speakers blasted a remix of Party in the USA loud enough to shake his mirrors, and the crown jewel, a banner stretching between two utility poles. Karen's annual Spring Bling Bash, no rules, just vibes. Doug stopped his truck a full block away, his fingers tapping the steering wheel as his jaw tightened. He couldn't even turn onto his own street. A woman in aviator shades and a rhinestone tiara was directing traffic like it was Coachella. That woman was Karen Dellsworth, the neighborhood's self-declared social chair and event queen. 5'3", red-haired and loud enough to wake the HOA board from a mile away. She had a reputation for throwing unauthorized parties and silencing complaints with cookies, charm, and pure audacity. The last time she got reported for noise, she allegedly gifted the officer a bottle of wine and a selfie. Doug, however, wasn't just another neighbor. He was a certified fire code compliance officer, responsible for inspecting venues, schools, government buildings, anything that required occupancy licenses and egress clearance. He knew exactly how dangerous this situation was. To the average person, it looked like harmless fun. To Doug, it looked like a lawsuit waiting to ignite. He grabbed his phone and opened his inspection app. Then, as calmly as possible, he parked on the shoulder, grabbed a notebook, and began walking toward the chaos. As he made his way down the street, he passed two middle-aged women sitting in plastic Adirondack chairs, sipping peach sangria. One of them pointed at him and smirked. "Uh-oh, Karen, it's your favorite neighbor." Karen spun around, hair bouncing, drink in hand. When she saw Doug, her eyes twinkled not with friendliness, but with that same smug energy a cat gives, just before knocking your glass off the counter. Well, she purred. "Didn't think you were the type to RSVP." Doug kept his tone neutral. "Karen, the street's blocked. You know emergency vehicles wouldn't make it through." Karen took a long sip of her drink. "Relax, fireman. It's a cul-de-sac. If something did happen, we'd just put it out ourselves." Doug glanced at the overloaded outlet powering the bounce house. 3 extension cords daisy-chained together, trailing through puddles left by the kid running a foam machine. "That what you told the insurance company to?" he asked. Karen's smile thinned, but she didn't blink. "Don't be such a buzzkill. This party is annual. Everyone loves it. I noticed the fire hydrant's blocked. That's a $1,000 fine right there," Doug said, more to himself than to her. She crossed her arms. "You really going to threaten me over some balloons and hot dogs?" Doug raised an eyebrow. "Karen, I'm not threatening you. I'm doing my job. Whether you like me or not has nothing to do with safety." Karen stepped closer, lowering her voice. "Then maybe you should remember who's on the HOA board before you start writing people up." Doug looked past her to a table loaded with Sterno cans right beside a canopy covered in crepe paper. All it would take was one wind gust and a distracted child. He took a breath. "You've got a bounce house under utility lines. Grills within 5 feet of property walls, no fire extinguishers, a completely blocked fire lane, and an open flame buffet next to flammable decor. I've seen better fire safety at middle school science fairs." Karen snorted. "You're just mad. No one invited you." Doug didn't respond. He simply turned, took out his phone, and snapped a wide-angle photo of the scene. Karen called out after him, smug again, "Better hope your boss doesn't party here next year." But what she didn't know, what no one knew, was that Doug was the one who issued safety approvals for public gatherings in the county. And the moment she blocked that hydrant, she broke a code punishable by thousands in fines and even property liens. Doug wasn't mad. He was methodical. He walked away slowly. But he wasn't going home to sulk. He was going home to get his badge and the party? It was about to be over before the beer ran out. Doug didn't slam the door when he got home. That wasn't his style. He hung his jacket with practice.com, took off his boots, and sat at the table. He opened his laptop, brought up the municipal enforcement portal, and clicked on a tab labeled Event Violation Reporting. Immediate review. It wasn't his first time filling one out. But this one felt personal, not because it offended him, but because it endangered every soul on Maple Cross Drive. He uploaded the photos, annotated the violations: obstructed fire lane, 92 feet bounce house, placed beneath high voltage wires, portable, propane grills within 3 feet of flammable surfaces, no visible extinguishers, electrical overloading of temporary equipment, live flame, buffet beside combustible decorations. There were 11 distinct violations. He added one more for good measure: unauthorized neighborhood gathering exceeding 50 persons without fire department permit. Doug didn't write a single angry word, just facts. Time-stamped, documented, location tagged. The city's system would route the case directly to the fire marshal's office, where it would be escalated for follow-up within 72 hours. But Doug knew it wouldn't take that long, because he had one more card to play. He opened his personal files and pulled up Form 8421R. It was rarely used and, never by accident. It was a cease and desist order, not a friendly warning, not a slap on the wrist. It meant, stop everything now, or we bring the consequences. But he didn't file it yet. He printed the form and slipped it into his briefcase. Karen had made it clear. She thought HOA rules made her untouchable. Doug was about to show her that fire code didn't bend for potlucks and pool float IES. By the following afternoon, things had already started to shift. A neighbor named Roy, a retired paramedic who lived 4 houses down, stopped Doug as he watered his front hedges. Hey, I saw the photos on Nextdoor, Roy said, scratching the back of his head. That hydrant was blocked the entire day. If we'd had a stroke or a house fire, we'd have been screwed. Doug didn't say much, just nodded. Roy added, you're doing the right thing, you know that, right? Doug nodded again, slower this time. I'm not trying to ruin anyone's fun. I'm trying to make sure the next call doesn't end in body bags. What neither of them knew yet, what Karen hadn't even realized, was that the fire marshal's office had already seen the report. And it wasn't just getting flagged for review. It was being assigned to emergency safety operations, the same department that handled school lockdowns and commercial building shutdowns. Someone high up had taken one look at the pictures and said, nope, send someone out now. Karen, meanwhile, was throwing an after-party for her inner circle, the Spring Bling Cleanup Crew, as she dubbed it. Her friends sat in her backyard sipping leftover wine coolers, giggling about the inflatable flamingo someone popped with a cigarette. One woman, Denise, chuckled and said, I thought Doug was gonna cry when he saw the cars. Like full-blown meltdown. Karen grinned, smug as ever. He probably went home and wrote a blog post about it. Denise snorted, he's got resting firefighter face. Karen rolled her eyes. Whatever, he can't do anything. He's just a neighbor. Then the doorbell rang. Karen got up, tipsy but steady, and opened it. 2 men stood on her porch, buttoned-up polos, ID badges clipped to their collars. Behind them, an unmarked vehicle idled in the street. Karen Dellsworth. She blinked. Yes, we're with County Fire Inspection Services. We need to discuss the recent event. Held at your residence. Karen's buzz dried up in an instant. Her voice dropped half an octave. Right now. Yes, ma'am. It's urgent. We'll need to walk the property, take a few statements, and ask some questions about permitting and fire safety protocol. Karen glanced back at her guests, suddenly aware of how exposed her wine bottles and burned-out fire pits looked from the porch. Then she saw Doug, standing across the street, just watering his hedges. He didn't wave, he didn't smile, he just watched, as the professionals walked her into her own house. Karen stood with her arms crossed in her living room, biting the inside of her cheek as the 2 inspectors clicked their cameras, scanned the walls, and took down notes with the precision of IRS auditors. On bonus day, was there an open flame in here during the event? The taller one asked, pointing to the charred corner of her outdoor rug. No, Karen snapped. That's from my citronella candle. It tipped on a plastic table. The shorter one noted, writing faster. And you say there were children present during this event? Yes, but look, I had adults watching. And how many guests? Approximately. Karen hesitated. I didn't count 50, maybe. The 2 men exchanged a look. Then they pulled out a thick form and flipped to a highlighted section. Karen caught the heading. Upside down, occupancy compliance for residential event hosting without permitting. Section 38.4b, closing parenthesis. Her stomach tightened. She tried to change the subject, her voice climbing in fake cheer. Listen, if this is about my bounce house, I've already taken it down. There's no need to. We're here to document what happened. One of them interrupted, firm but polite. Your party was brought to our attention via official reporting with time-stamped evidence. Based on that, your property may qualify for emergency compliance review. Karen flinched at the word may. She had never felt this. Out of control? Worse? She had no clue who had reported her. She assumed Doug, of course, but if others joined him, that meant this wasn't a petty grudge anymore. This was real. Thought followed her even after they left, and it was still echoing around her skull. When she opened her phone and saw the message thread lighting up HOA, group chat Maple Crossboard Travis, why weren't we told about your party ahead of time? Lisa, was the bounce house even approved? Margie, this is a PR disaster. I just saw a Reddit thread about it. Travis again. If anyone gets sued because a fire truck couldn't access the road, the HOA is on the hook. Karen stared at the screen. Her hands began to sweat. Doug hadn't just reported her. He'd triggered a chain reaction. Across the street, Doug sat calmly at his kitchen table, sipping water and staring at his laptop. He wasn't gloating. He didn't smile. This wasn't about revenge. This was about responsibility. He opened the scanned copy of his earlier violation report, then navigated to a second file he'd been compiling quietly since last year. Karen Dellsworth. Unresolved complaints. HOA logs. Fire reports. Public posts. One incident involved her setting up tiki torches during a drought warning. Another detailed a fall s'mores fest where open flames had singed a neighbor's cedar fence. A third included a photo of Karen handing a lit sparkler to a child in a stroller. He added the newest info from the inspection team. Then, he clicked to upload the data to the city's fire risk archive. When the page asked for the box labeled, "Would you recommend formal enforcement escalation?" he checked yes. Then shut his laptop. Outside, birds chirped like nothing had changed. But inside, Karen was spiraling. That night, she walked into the HOA clubhouse for the monthly board meeting 15 minutes late. Normally, her entrance turned heads. Tonight, it barely turned one. She took her seat, brushing off her floral blazer, and tried to seize control. Okay, let's address the elephant in the room. Doug Larson has decided to make a federal case out of a neighborhood tradition she didn't get to finish. Travis, a tall man with an ex-Marine's glare and a real estate investor's disdain for liability, raised a hand. We're not here to listen to spin, Karen. We're here to ask why you didn't get clearance for a public event on HOA-owned easements. She blinked. I didn't think I needed to. You do, Lisa chimed in, scrolling on her iPad, especially when it blocks access for emergency vehicles and we become liable. You had grills backed against siding. We have to report that to our insurer. Karen's smile cracked at the edges. You guys are blowing this way out of. We've received 3 formal complaints since Sunday. Travis cut in. From residents, not Doug. Karen froze. That's when she realized it wasn't just Doug anymore. She was losing the room, and she hadn't even seen the form. Doug had printed. Not yet. The sun hit differently the next morning, too bright. Too harsh, like it knew something Karen didn't. She pulled her blinds, closed with a snap, and collapsed on her couch, the taste of last night's wine still clinging to her tongue. Her phone buzzed nonstop, but she ignored it, until one notification finally made her freeze. Stonebrush Fire Code. Violation goes viral. County responds. Local neighborhood watch reposts official fire inspection photos from Spring Bling. Bash. Karen clicked. There she was, center frame in her white dress, plastic champagne flute in hand, with a grill and a flaming chafing dish inches from a vinyl fence behind her. The caption read, "This is why enforcement matters. We don't need a tragedy to start taking rules seriously." The comment section was brutal. My nephew lives on that street. That's reckless. Why didn't anyone stop her before? This woman is what happens when the HOA becomes a high school popularity contest. Karen didn't know whether to cry or scream. Across the street, Doug watched the neighborhood, quietly from his porch. He could feel the shift not in the air, but in people's posture. The woman walking her dog gave him a thumbs up. A teenager on a skateboard nodded respectfully, instead of swerving into his lawn like usual. Even Roy, the retired paramedic, waved from his porch with a silent look of appreciation. Doug didn't crave attention, but he knew one thing. Respect followed responsibility. And Karen, she was about to find out what followed reckless arrogance. That afternoon, Doug got a call from the city office. The fire marshal herself, Chief Helene Brandt. Larson, she said, no pleasantries, we're escalating your submission. This one's gone political. We're getting heat from 2 council members. They want enforcement, not warnings. Real teeth. Doug didn't hesitate. Understood. I've got the 8421R prepped and documented. All violations lined up. You sure about serving it yourself? She asked. Doug glanced across the street to Karen's 2-story house, now quieter than a church on Monday. I'm sure. Give her the form. And Doug, yes, Chief. Don't forget to smile when you do it. That evening, Karen was on the porch with her 3rd glass of Chardonnay when Doug crossed the street. He wasn't in uniform. No badge, no clipboard. Just slacks, a clean shirt, and a leather briefcase. He walked up the stone path like he had every legal right to be there, and he did. Karen stiffened when she saw him. Oh, what now? She scoffed, forcing a sneer. Come to arrest me for daring to enjoy my own property. Doug didn't answer immediately. He reached into his case and pulled out the document. It wasn't thick, just 4 pages, but it hit like a wrecking ball. Karen, Dellsworth, you're being served with a formal notice of violation under County Fire Code 17C, as well as a cease and desist under Form 8421R. Your property is subject to compliance verification within 10 business days, or penalties escalate. To state enforcement, Karen's mouth fell open. Cease and desist. For what? Doug calmly listed them, one by one. Open flame within 6 feet of a structure. Blocking fire access. Illegal occupancy. Unpermitted crowd gathering. No posted extinguishers. Multiple past infractions with photographic evidence. Her voice shrieked through the cold S. You can't do this. I'm on the HOA board. Doug's eyes didn't waver. Not anymore. You're not. The board suspended you yesterday. That part she hadn't heard yet. Karen's glass slipped from her fingers and shattered on the patio. Inside her house, the lights stayed off for hours. No music, no guests. Just shadows stretching across granite countertops as Karen scrolled furiously through her emails. HOA notices, and legal threats piling up like dead leaves. The worst one wasn't even from the city. It was from her homeowners. Insurance, due to your ongoing code violations and non-permitted gatherings, We are reevaluating your eligibility for coverage renewal. Please respond within 14 days. Her stomach dropped. Karen had always played pretend politics, throwing parties like she ruled the block. But now, reality was clawing at her windows, and she had no one to blame, no one but herself. Doug went back to his porch, the form no longer in his hand, and sat down with his feet up. Roy passed by with his dog again. You served it? Doug nodded. Roy gave a low whistle. She's gonna explode. Doug cracked a faint grin. Not if she fixes the wiring first. And somewhere behind Karen's darkened blinds, she watched him, wondering how a simple man with a watering can had brought her whole kingdom crashing down. 3 days after the cease and desist order hit her doorstep like a legal lightning bolt, Karen Dellsworth woke up with a plan. She wasn't going to be humiliated. Not by Doug, not by the county, not by some outdated codes written before Bluetooth even existed. She poured herself a mimosa, pulled her pink laptop onto the patio table, and opened a blank document titled, HOA Tyranny. My neighbor is a fire code Nazi. It started as a rant in a letter, then a blog post. She dumped every ounce of victimhood into it. Doug was unhinged, obsessed, overreaching with government power. She accused him of stalking her backyard, threatening her children who hadn't lived at home in years, and what? Fire law to bully women? She hit publish and blasted the link across the HOA mailing list, the Nextdoor group, her Facebook timeline, and even a subreddit called r/HOA Justice. And for the first 2 hours, it worked. Comments trickled in. You should sue him for harassment. Typical government overreach. He's probably jealous he wasn't invited to the party. Karen smirked and leaned back, wine glass in hand, but the tide turned faster than she expected. A user named FireGuy91 posted a comment. I work code enforcement. Her violations are textbook dangerous. I've seen towns burn over less. Then came the photos. Screenshots of open flames, the bounce house under wires, the chafing dish melting the fence. Another commenter posted Doug's credentials. County code inspector, 18 plus years. This guy probably saved your neighborhood. Then, silence. Then, the backlash. You endangered kids to show off. You're lucky he didn't have you arrested. This woman screams, HOA Karen. The post got flagged, removed. Her public tantrum didn't land, it detonated, then fizzled out in front of everyone. Doug wasn't even aware of the post until Roy mentioned it. You saw that dumpster fire she tried to light online. Doug shook his head, sipping coffee on his front steps. Oh yeah, Roy chuckled. Didn't last long. Half the neighborhood saw through it. Couple of folks actually thanked you in the comments. Doug didn't reply. He wasn't chasing applause. He was watching something else. A letter, unofficial HOA letterhead, shoved into his mailbox that morning. Karen had filed a complaint against him, alleging targeted harassment, professional overreach, and personal interference with board business. It would have been laughable if it hadn't come with signatures from 2 board members, Marvin and Lisa. Doug raised an eyebrow. Lisa, he expected. She always floated whichever way party wine was poured. But Marvin, he usually stayed neutral. Until now. Doug grabbed his briefcase, pulled out a different folder, this time one labeled Private. Board Conflict of Interest, HOA Overlap Reports. Inside were property records, budget proposals, and vendor with Marvin's name next to Karen's parties, catering, tent rentals, portable speaker equipment. The HOA had been paying for Karen's personal events. Doug hadn't filed those yet, but now he would. He didn't need to scream, he just needed to show the receipts. Karen was back in the clubhouse 2 days later, time dressed in what she called her legal chic outfit, navy blazer, designer belt, and oversized sunglasses indoors. She came to fight. She slapped the complaint on the table at the emergency board meeting. I want Doug Larson formally reprimanded. This man has made my life hell. He stalked my events, scared my guests, and turned our community into a police state. Marvin nodded slowly beside her. Doug stood from his seat in the back. I'd like to submit my rebuttal, he said calmly, handing out copies of a neatly stapled report. Karen scoffed. Here we go. But the board members went quiet as they flipped pages. In black and white, vendor invoices paid by HOA funds for private events, held exclusively at Karen's residence. Email chains between Karen and Marvin, approving transactions, without full board consent. Violations Karen ignored, buried, or laughed off, attached to photos with TIMESTAMPS. At the last page, a printed email between Karen and Marvin, joking about writing off another wine bar as a community hydration station. Lisa pushed back from the table. Karen, did you really make us pay for your last 4 parties? Karen turned ghost-white. Doug calmly added, if this goes public, it's not just an ethics violation, it's embezzlement. Marvin stood up. I need a break. No one stopped him. Karen didn't speak again. Not that night. The clubhouse meeting ended in silence. But the storm kept brewing. Karen walked out without her sunglasses, without her swagger, and for the first time in a long time, without anyone following her. Marvin didn't say a word. He just kept walking, his face pale and his phone buzzing endlessly. Lisa stayed behind, flipping through Doug's packet like she was discovering her name on a court summons. Doug didn't linger. He didn't need to. By the next morning, the city had officially opened a dual investigation, one by the fire marshal and the other by the county auditor. It wasn't just about the party anymore. It was about fraud, liability, and misuse of public HOA funds. Karen, of course, wasn't ready to admit defeat. If she was going down, she'd go out loud. That Saturday, Doug was pruning the hedges when a siren wailed down Maple Cross Drive. Not an emergency siren, a megaphone mounted on a red, beat-up pickup truck rolling slow through the neighborhood like it was campaigning for HOA president of Planet Crazy. "Wake up, Maple Cross," the speaker blared. "This is your last chance to stand up to tyranny." Doug blinked. It was Karen, standing in the back of the truck bed, in oversized sunglasses and a leopard print scarf, flanked by a teen with a selfie stick and a Bluetooth speaker pumping some kind of royalty-free revolution music. "This is still a free country," she yelled, microphone in hand, "and we do not let pencil pushers and clipboard cowboys tell us how to live." The few neighbors who peeked out their windows stared in horror or amusement. Karen kept shouting. She threw handfuls of poorly folded flyers onto lawns as the truck rolled along. One landed at Doug's feet. It read, "Fire Marshal" or "Fire Monster." "Doug Larson is enforcing code like a dictator." "What's next?" "Ban backyard barbecues." "Arrest toddlers for sidewalk chalk." "Don't let one man ruin our way of life." Doug sighed and turned back to his hedge trimmer. She was spiraling, and the louder she got, the more damage she did. By that evening, the HOA inbox was on fire. At least 6 residents had emailed the board asking if Karen's truck stunt had been approved. It hadn't. Doug knew that. Everyone knew that. But the real hit came Monday morning, when the county fire marshal's office issued an official public statement. "We regret to inform the residents of Maple Cross that continued non-compliance by specific homeowners and the obstruction of public safety initiatives has led us to escalate enforcement procedures. Effective immediately, any future events without permits will result in citations up to $10,000 and potential liens on properties found to be in violation." Attached to the memo, a photo of Karen shouting from her truck bed, caption, "Ongoing disruption to fire code enforcement, investigated subject." Doug didn't print it, but someone did, because by noon, that image was taped to the HOA clubhouse door with red marker across the top. "This isn't leadership, it's lunacy." Karen finally snapped the following night. She stomped across the street and banged on Doug's door. Not knocked. Banged. He opened it slowly. She didn't even wait. "You've ruined my life, you smug little man. You think hiding behind your badge makes you better than everyone." Doug looked at her calmly. "I think preventing a fire that could have killed a family makes me better than silence." Her lip quivered. "You think you're untouchable?" "No," Doug said softly. "But the truth is," Karen shook with rage, "you should watch your back. This neighborhood remembers betrayal." Doug didn't flinch. "So does the law." Then he handed her a piece of paper, not legal, not official. Just a simple list of the 10 closest fire stations, with contact numbers and one line handwritten at the bottom. "Next time you throw a party, call them first. You might actually save a life." Karen stared at it. Her fury collapsed into silence. She dropped the paper on his porch and turned without a word. By the next morning, the truck was gone. The flyers vanished. Her social media was wiped clean. And for the first time in months, Maple Cross Drive felt quiet, but Doug knew it wouldn't last. Because what came next wasn't a warning, it was the consequence. Karen didn't show her face for 3 days. The glitter banners were gone. Her porch, once overflowing with string lights and gaudy planters, sat stripped bare like a stage after the curtain falls. The only sound from her house was the low hum of a box fan and the occasional muted TV. She didn't answer the door, didn't respond to calls. And for the first time in HOA memory, Karen Dellsworth was off-grid. Doug wasn't surprised. He wasn't smug either. He knew this wasn't over. Not yet. The real hammer hadn't dropped. Not until Monday. That's when the letter arrived. The HOA board met at 7 p.m. sharp inside the clubhouse. The usual coffee pot was missing. So was the fruit tray Karen used to bring, always cut into smug little cubes. Instead, there was a single envelope waiting at the center of the table, stamped with the county auditor's seal. Lisa read it first, then Travis, then everyone else. By the time Doug was called in, the silence was heavy. Karen was already seated at the end of the table, face pale, eyes darting. Marvin sat beside her, stiff as a stone, jaw clenched like he hadn't slept. Travis didn't waste time. "The county has concluded its review. You," he said, pointing to Karen, "violated multiple codes of conduct both in terms of personal event planning and misuse of HOA funds for non-approved gatherings." Karen opened her mouth, but Lisa cut her off. "You billed the HOA for a snow cone machine and labeled it hydration unit. You booked a mariachi band under community morale services. You approved nearly $7,000 of HOA money for events only held at your house." Karen tried to laugh. "That's ridiculous. Those were block parties." Public morale is part of our stop. Travis snapped. This isn't debate, it's disclosure. The city's investigation has already forwarded your conduct to a civil claims attorney. You could be liable for repayment and administrative penalties. She turned to Marvin, panicked. You signed off on all of it with me. Why aren't you defending this? Marvin stared straight ahead. I've already submitted my resignation, he said quietly. Karen went silent. Doug sat in the back, hands folded, watching the final fire burn down the structure she'd built from arrogance and charm. And then Lisa dropped the match. There's one final motion on the table. Immediate removal of Karen Dellsworth from the HOA board and permanent suspension of event hosting privileges under Article 5 of our bylaws. Karen stood, trembling. You can't do that without a vote. We already did, Travis said. Unanimous. She looked around. No one met her eyes. Outside the clubhouse, the summer air hung humid and tense. Karen stormed past Doug, saying nothing. She didn't yell. She didn't spit insults. She just walked. Something in her had cracked, and now it was leaking into every step. Doug stayed behind. Lisa walked over. She probably moved. I give it a month. Doug nodded once. She doesn't know. Lisa added, but we're filing an insurance claim on the funds she misused. We might be able to recoup most of it, but the city's going to audit everything now. Doug didn't gloat. Good. That's how it should be. Lisa looked tired. You were right. About all of it. We should have listened sooner. Doug just looked out at the road. I don't care about being right. I care about not having to explain to a grieving parent that help couldn't reach them because someone blocked the road with a margarita cart. Lisa blinked hard, then nodded and walked away. That night, Karen's house went dark again, but this time, there was a for sale by owner sign planted in her yard. And on the Nextdoor app, a final message appeared under her account. Due to toxic harassment and a campaign of personal vengeance, I will be relocating. This neighborhood has lost its heart. No comments, no upvotes. Just quiet. Doug saw the message over breakfast and scrolled past it. He didn't reply, he didn't share it. He simply closed the app and went outside. The sun rose soft over Maple Cross, no sirens, no banners, no blocked hydrants, and for the first time in months, the street was clear. A week passed. The for sale by owner sign in Karen's yard went from defiant to desperate. The once vibrant garden she used to obsessively preen wilted. Under the June heat, her solar lights flickered out one by one. The neighborhood noticed not with celebration, but with relief. Doug didn't say much. He stayed steady watering the hedges, reading the paper, nodding politely at neighbors who passed by. But people began to linger longer. Conversations bloomed where silence used to sit. Doug didn't ask for it, but something had changed. They saw him now not just as the quiet guy across the street, but as the reason they could sleep at night without wondering if a grill would tip over and torch a cold-day-sack. Then one morning, something unexpected showed up in Doug's mailbox. A thick envelope, unmarked except for a gold-embossed seal. County Office of Public Safety and Civil Oversight. He opened it cautiously. Inside was a formal letter. Mr. Larson, due to your recent intervention regarding code violations in Maple Cross and your consistent enforcement of life safety standards within a residential context, we would like to invite you to serve on the County Fire Code Advisory Board as a civilian liaison. Your insights have proven essential, and your handling of recent events has demonstrated integrity, patience, and leadership. Please consider this your preliminary appointment, pending final approval. We'd be honored to have you. Doug stared at the page for a long time. He didn't smile. Not right away. He thought of the bounce house, the open flames, the blocked hydrant, the kids laughing, unaware that disaster was waiting to breathe. If one wire sparked or a gust of wind tipped the wrong pan. Then he thought of Karen, her voice shaking with rage. Her little empire built on favors, noise, and denial. And how, in the end, it all collapsed not with fire or lawsuits but with a clipboard, a few photos, and the quiet power of doing the right thing. A few nights later, there was a knock at Doug's door. It wasn't Karen, it was Lisa, holding a folder and looking sheepish. Got a minute? She asked. Doug stepped aside. She sat at his kitchen table and slid the folder. Across inside was a stack of signatures, dozens of them, from nearly every household on the block. We want you on the HOA board, she said softly. Travis is stepping down, he's moving. Everyone agrees it should be you. Doug shook his head. You sure about that? After all this? She smiled. You didn't burn the place down. You kept it from burning. He didn't answer right away. He just stared out the window, toward the street that now sat quiet and clean. All right, he finally said, but I don't do birthday banners. Lisa laughed. Deal. Karen moved. Out 3 weeks later, no one saw her go. One day the sign was there, the next it wasn't. She left a goodbye Maple Cross post in the HOA thread. It was ignored. Doug didn't reply. He had new things to focus on. The next block event had a real permit this time, grills spaced properly, hydrants left clear, bounce house staked securely, fire extinguisher stations posted with laminated instructions. The party was smaller than Karen's had ever been, but it was safe. Neighbors laughed, kids played, and for once, the music didn't drown out common sense. Doug stood at the edge of the crowd, hands in his pockets, watching a toddler chase bubbles with a firefighter's helmet too big for his head. Lisa nudged him. Kind of funny, huh? All it took to fix this place was one man with a badge and a bush trimmer. Doug chuckled. One man can't fix everything. No, she agreed. But one man can stop a fire. Call to action for YouTube ending. So, what do you think? Was Doug too harsh or exactly what Maple Cross needed? Comment below if you've ever dealt with the party crazy HOA Karen, and hit that like button if you think safety should never be optional. And hey, subscribe if you want more real neighborhood drama where justice comes with a quiet clipboard and one epic twist. See you in the next firestorm.